Greetings and welcome to the study, which is entitled The Epic Future Day of Atonement and the Jubilee of Messiah. Other videos on the 70 Weeks Prophecy are up on YouTube under the username Gavin Finley. The 70 Weeks Prophecy brings us a wealth of information for timing and chronology. The first 69 weeks ended nearly 2,000 years ago with the first coming of Messiah. At that time he came to Jerusalem in his priestly ministry as the suffering servant. The 70th week is somewhere up there in our future. It will terminate with the second coming of Messiah in his kingdom office as the King of Kings. That 70th week of Daniel, those final 7 years, will wrap up the 10th Jubilee and finish up the timeline of the 70 Weeks Prophecy. This is the grand apex to holy history. Not surprisingly, it now seems clear that this glorious event will indeed be heralded with the trumpets of Jubilee. Messiah will return to set the captives free, deliver Jerusalem, and gather his elect, the living and the dead, from both sides of Calvary. He will restore all Israel, raising up the dead and rapturing out those all who are alive and remain in the resurrection rapture. Here we see Ezekiel's awe-inspiring resurrection vision of the Valley of Dry Bones from Ezekiel chapter 37. The trumpets of Jubilee will certainly be an appropriate and auspicious celebration as Messiah comes to raise up his people at the last day. The magnificent resurrection rapture of all the saints will come on a day and an hour unknown in the day of the Lord at the climax of this age. As we see in Leviticus 25, the trumpets of Jubilee are blown on the Day of Atonement. The Day of Atonement is that awesome yet to be fulfilled climactic future moed or appointed time. It is the sixth of the 7 feasts of Israel. If you Google 7 feasts of Israel, you will find our web page and a YouTube video on the 7 feasts. The first 4 feasts were fulfilled in the springtime and the summer of the Passion Year nearly 2,000 years ago. Those last 3 moads, the 4 feasts of Israel, will be fulfilled in times to come, during the 70th week and soon after the 70th week ends. We shall present additional evidence up ahead that the Day of Atonement wraps up the 70th week and the final 7 years of this age. It will in fact be the last day of this present evil age. The Day of Atonement, the 6th appointed time, comes at the end of the 10 days of awe on the 10th day of Tishrei. This is the most fearful day on the Hebrew calendar. On this special high holy day, in some awesome future year, the trumpets of Jubilee will sound, and at the set time the Day of Atonement will come into its ultimate new covenant fulfillment. This age will certainly end spectacularly, with the Ancient of Days in sovereign control of events. So if that future Day of Atonement is accompanied by an epic Jubilee of biblical proportions, is this not to be expected? This wonderful item of Hebraic art entitled The Final Prayer is by Jewish artist Yossi Rosenstein. It showcases that climactic future and final Yom Kippur, the one that will wrap up all the Yom Kippurs that have gone before it. The Day of Atonement is simply not appreciated by Christian or even Messianic Bible teachers for what it is. It is the last day of this present evil age. It is the day of reckoning, the day of accounting. It is a last call. Space-time then unzips, the heavens of this present cosmos roll back, and our returning Messiah is unveiled in the day of the Lord. The Day of Atonement is a day of accounting, a day of reckoning, a day of pardoning, and a day of sentencing. On this day appointed, in that epic future fall season, the books will be opened. This is a straightforward legal protocol. The returning Messiah must wrap up all the legal affairs of this present evil age before they can be taken on to execution. This Day of Atonement is a day of reconciliation of accounts for all, the living and the dead, from both sides of Calvary. This is more than just a Bema Olympic-style judgment for rewards and medals. Every single person will be brought before the judgment seat of Christ to give an account of his life. There is a merciful covering for sin. Full atonement is provided for those who know Messiah. And on that awesome future Day of Atonement, the high priest will bring the blood of the lamb up from the sacrifice altar to be applied to the mercy seat. And this is where that blood came from. The blood of the lamb has been showcased as the covering of sin going all the way back to the garden, to righteous Abel, to Enoch, to Noah, to Abraham, and all the patriarchs we see in the Old Testament. The Levitical priesthood officiated at the sacrifices for the nation of Israel. All these were appointed to that ultimate sacrifice to come. The sacrifices will be performed in the coming millennium. There will continue to be powerful object lessons showing the death of Israel's innocent sacrifice lamb and the high price he paid for our redemption. The Torah tells of our father Abraham going up to sacrifice his son. God needed to see that his covenant partner Abraham was prepared to do this, but he did not allow it to happen. Isaac carried the wood for his own sacrifice up the hill. This was a foreshadowing of someone else on the Godward side of the Abrahamic covenant who was to follow. Abraham was told, God will provide himself a lamb. He looked up and saw the substitute sacrifice. The thorns were wrapped around his head, just as they were here. The blood of atonement came down to the earth. This blood, the blood of the Lamb of God, is our ultimate covering for sin, and it is this blood that will sprinkle many nations and save many. For those under this blood, the blood of Israel's sacrificed lamb, this climactic fulfillment of the Day of Atonement will be a day of covering and a day of pardoning. On that day, all those who have cried out to God for mercy and found peace in Him will receive their ultimate blood covering for sin. Up in the heavenly sanctuary, the atoning blood of Israel's promised sacrifice lamb will be applied to the mercy seat. This is the way to eternal salvation, and by this blood, the blood of Messiah, all who know Him will enter into the glory. For those who have rejected this great salvation, that climactic future day of atonement will be a day of sentencing. The books will be opened. Rebels will discover that they are facing God's wrath, and there is no place for them to hide. The Day of Atonement is a day of reconciliation of accounts. When Judgment Day comes, the wicked will have their day in court. Out of legal and holy necessity, this day of sentencing must be finalized and wrapped up before the harvest angels of wrath can be loosed to execute. After the judgment, the execution follows. When the sun sets on that final, epic future Day of Atonement, space-time will be pulled aside to unveil an open heaven in the day of the Lord. This is that day of vengeance quoted in Isaiah 61:2. Jesus omitted this last portion of the passage from his reading when he came the first time as a suffering servant. This day of vengeance is the day of the Lord. For the wicked, the day of the Lord will be horrific beyond telling. The wrath of God will fall very quickly, specifically, and personally upon them. Evil angels of wrath will swoop down upon the heads of their people like raptors plucking up the prey, carrying them off to an eternity of sheer and utter torment. Jesus spoke about this awful harvest of the tares by the grim reapers in the parable of the sower in Matthew 13:30. Jesus said that the tares would be gathered first. For more on the angels of wrath, see Psalm 78:49. So when we understand that the trumpets of Jubilee will be blown on some future day of atonement, and just why this judgment day must come on the last day of this age, the fog begins to clear. We then begin to see that this final fulfillment of Yom Kippur, the sixth of the seven feasts of Israel, is a key piece to the jigsaw puzzle of end-time Bible prophecy. And we have some additional evidence that the Day of Atonement on Tishrei 10 of some future year will mark the terminus of the final 7 years of this age. It seems that the 70th week and the final 7 years of this age are precisely staked out by the upcoming, yet-to-be-fulfilled fall feasts of Israel, those being the Feast of Trumpets, or Rosh Hashanah, Tishrei 1, and the Day of Atonement, Yom Kippur, which comes on Tishrei 10, 7 years later. Both time spans add up to a total of 2550 days. This is probably not a coincidence. So as we see, the Day of Atonement is the linchpin unlocking the apocalypse. It is the key event leading up to the unveiling or the revelation of Messiah. The trumpets of Jubilee will announce and herald the coming millennium of Messiah. The coming millennial kingdom on earth has been spoken of in poetic terms by the prophets of old, especially Isaiah. He spoke of the waters bursting forth in the wilderness, streams in the desert. The wilderness and the wasteland shall be glad for them, and the desert shall rejoice and blossom as the rose. This is in Isaiah 35. When Messiah returns to establish his millennial kingdom, he will bring relief to those who mourn, and he will establish a just and righteous economy here on earth. So we can be sure that he will institute the Jubilee system we see laid out in Leviticus 25. So it appears that our attempts to lay out Jubilee cycles in the gap period during this present age of the heathen Gentiles these past 2,000 years have all been in vain. From what we have seen here and in Revelation 11:2, it seems that God is not measuring out our years for the Jubilee cycles right now. Apparently God is only counting out the years for the Jubilee cycles in the timeline he himself has determined, or cut out of time. This holy time is the 70 weeks of Daniel. Pronouncements regarding sabbatical or Smitty years in this present era, and all sorts of speculations based upon various 49 and 50-year Jubilee cycles, beginning on certain special dates in past history, are popping up quite frequently now. But from what we have seen, there is no solid biblical basis for any of them. Unlike the sanctuary, the altar, and the people who belong to the altar of Israel's sacrificed lamb, the time we are now living in is not holy or set apart or to be measured. Like the outer court of the Gentiles, John was asked not to measure in Revelation 11, 1-2. God is not accounting for jubilees in this gap period. It has been given to the Goyim, the heathen, the Gentiles. Bible scholars have been looking into the mystery of the Jubilee cycles for many centuries now. They have thought that they could find them running down here in our profane earthly time. And so these vital Jubilee connections to the 70 weeks prophecy have apparently gone unnoticed. And so from what we have seen here and from the body of Old Testament prophetic poetry, we can now say this: the artists, the hymn writers and songwriters are all quite correct. Out of Zion will come a deliverer in the year of Jubilee.
Awake, Israel, pull up thy slumber, and the truth shall set you free. For out of Zion comes thy deliverer.